Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Today, we are going to take a fascinating journey through three different Kennedy half dollars from three different generations of American coinage. These coins may look familiar at first glance, but each one has its own story, its own characteristics, and its own potential collector value. In today's video, we're looking closely at the 1971 D Kennedy half dollar, the 1972 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark, and the modern 2023 P Kennedy half dollar. From a historic 1970s coin to a modern Philadelphia mint issue, these three half dollars give us an excellent opportunity to understand how condition, mint marks, varieties, circulation, and collector demand can affect a coin's value. The 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is especially interesting because 1971 marked the beginning of the copper-nickel clad era for regular Kennedy half dollars after silver was removed from the half dollar. The D mint mark tells us that this particular coin was struck at the Denver Mint. If your example has been circulated and shows normal wear, its value is generally modest, but exceptional condition or unusual characteristics can make certain examples much more interesting to collectors. Next, we have the 1972 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark. Many people see a coin without a mint mark and immediately think something is missing or that the coin must be in error, but that is not necessarily the case. The regular 1972 Philadelphia Kennedy half dollar was produced without a mint mark, so the absence of a mint mark is normal for this issue. However, there are important varieties associated with the 1972 coin. Number 1, if you have a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar sitting in an old coin collection, a drawer, a jar of change, or even an inherited box of coins, you may be wondering whether this half dollar is worth only its face value or whether its condition, mint mark, or unusual characteristics could make it more valuable to collectors. 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is an interesting coin because it was produced during an important period in U.S. coinage, just after the United States had moved away from the earlier silver composition used on Kennedy half dollars. The D mint mark tells us that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. More than 302 million 1971 D Kennedy half dollars were produced, so this is not an extremely rare date in ordinary circulated condition. However, that does not mean every example is worth only 50 cents. Condition, strike quality, eye appeal, errors, varieties, and especially very high certified grades can dramatically change the market value of an individual coin. The first thing to understand is that the 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is a copper-nickel clad coin, not one of the 40% silver Kennedy half dollars from the late 1960s and 1970. This distinction is extremely important when estimating value. The 1971 D issue was made for circulation and has a face value of 50 cents. Because it was produced in such a large quantity, a normal worn example generally does not carry a huge premium. Current catalog information places ordinary circulated 1971 D examples around the range of roughly 55 cents to 80 cents depending on the grade and market source. That means a coin in genuinely good or heavily circulated condition should not automatically be advertised as a hundreds or thousands of dollars coin. When we say good condition, we're talking about a coin that has experienced substantial circulation. On the obverse, John F. Kennedy's portrait will show noticeable wear, with many of the finer details softened or missing. His hair, cheek, jawline, and other high points can appear smooth. The lettering may also show wear around the edges. On the reverse, the presidential seal and eagle will have lost some of their finer detail. The feathers, leaves, arrows, and other small features can become less distinct. A good condition coin can still be attractive if it is even color, no major damage, and a clear date and mint mark, but collectors generally do not pay a large premium for an ordinary heavily circulated 1971 D Kennedy half dollar. The D mint mark is another important detail to check. On a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar, the D indicates Denver production. You should carefully examine the area near the date on the obverse to verify the mint mark. Do not confuse scratches, stains, or damage with a mint mark. If your coin does have a genuine D, it is a 1971 D issue rather than the Philadelphia issue, and its mintage was substantially larger than the Philadelphia 1971 Kennedy half dollar mintage. The 1971 D had a reported mintage of 302,097,424 pieces. Now let us talk about the part that interests most collectors: value. If your 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is heavily circulated and falls around good condition, a realistic market expectation is generally close to face value rather than a spectacular fortune. Depending on the exact condition, buyer demand, and whether the coin has an unusual characteristic, you might see a value around 50 cents to approximately $1. Current Numista data lists the 1971 D at about 55 cents in good, 59 cents in very good and fine, and about 72 cents in very fine, while other market guides can give somewhat different figures. These numbers should be treated as estimates rather than guaranteed selling prices. As the coin becomes less worn, the situation changes. A very fine or extremely fine example can be worth somewhat more than a heavily worn coin, but the increase is still usually modest because so many 1971 D Kennedy half dollars survive. The value of a circulated coin is strongly influenced by its appearance. A coin with scratches, heavy stains, environmental damage, cleaning, corrosion, or other problems may sell for less than an otherwise similar coin. On the other hand, an attractive coin with strong surfaces and minimal distracting marks can be more desirable to collectors. One of the biggest mistakes people make with old coins is assuming that age alone creates high value. A coin from 1971 is now more than 5 decades old, but age is only one factor in numismatics. Rarity, condition, demand, historical importance, composition, varieties, and surviving population all matter. Since hundreds of millions of 1971 D Kennedy half dollars were made, the date itself does not make a normal circulated example rare. The real opportunity is finding an example with an unusual error, recognized variety, exceptional preservation, or an unusually high certified grade. This is where mint state examples become much more interesting. A mint state coin is an uncirculated coin that retains its original mint surface and has not experienced normal circulation wear. The difference between a circulated coin and a high-grade mint state coin can be dramatic. Current PCGS population data shows thousands of certified 1971 D Kennedy half dollars across various mint state grades, but the population becomes much smaller at the highest levels. PCGS's current population report lists 1971 D examples across grades from MS60 through MS68, with only a small number reaching the very top grade levels. According to current CPG information reported by Numista, a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is listed around $1.10 in MS60, $1.20 in MS61, $1.40 in MS62, $1.50 in MS63, approximately $4.10 in MS64, about $8 in MS65, and around $14 in MS66. The values rise sharply at the very highest grades, with the listed CPG figure reaching about $70 at MS67 and approximately $3,100 at MS68. This is an excellent example of why condition can be more important than age. A normal circulated 1971 D may be worth around its face value, while an exceptionally rare high-grade certified example can be worth thousands. However, viewers should be very careful with the phrase worth thousands. That does not mean every 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is worth thousands of dollars. A coin has to meet the necessary condition and grading standards to reach the extreme end of the market. A heavily worn coin cannot simply be called MS68 because it looks shiny. Mint state grading requires the coin to be uncirculated, and professional grading services examine surface preservation, luster, strike marks, and overall appearance. A coin that has been cleaned or damaged may not receive the grade a collector expects. Professional certification can become particularly important for a potentially valuable high-grade coin, if you believe your 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is unusually well preserved. You can compare it carefully with certified examples and consider whether professional authentication and grading make financial sense. Certification costs money, so it generally makes less sense for a common, heavily circulated example worth around face value. But for a genuinely exceptional coin, certification can provide an independent grade and make it easier for serious collectors to evaluate. Another important area to examine is possible mint errors. Errors happen during the manufacturing process, and genuine major errors can sometimes command premiums. But the internet is full of photographs of damaged coins being described as rare errors. A scratch is not automatically an error. A dent is not automatically an error. A flattened area caused by circulation is not automatically a doubled die. Discoloration is not automatically a rare variety. Before assigning a large value to an unusual-looking coin, collectors should determine whether the feature was actually created during the minting process. Some 1971 D Kennedy half dollars are also associated in collecting references with doubled die varieties. These varieties can be considerably more interesting than an ordinary example, but the exact attribution matters. A coin should not be called a doubled die simply because lettering or design elements appear slightly doubled in a photograph. Machine doubling, strike weakness, die deterioration, and normal design characteristics can create appearances that are easily mistaken for a true doubled die. If you think you have a genuine variety, detailed comparison with recognized references or professional attribution is recommended. The surfaces of your 1971 D Kennedy half dollar should also be inspected under good lighting. Look at the fields around Kennedy's portrait and the areas surrounding the lettering. Check for deep scratches, gouges, unusual raised lines, discoloration, and signs of cleaning. On the reverse, carefully examine the eagle shield lettering in open fields. A coin that has been aggressively polished may look bright, but artificial brightness is not the same as original mint luster. In many cases, collectors prefer original surfaces over a shiny coin that has been cleaned. You should also check the edge of the coin. The 1971 D Kennedy half dollar has a copper-nickel clad composition, so the edge can provide useful clues. If you see unusual separation, missing clad material, a strange edge shape, or another feature that appears to have occurred during mint production, it may deserve further investigation. But again, damage that happened after the coin left the mint should not be confused with a mint error. The historical story behind this coin is also worth remembering. Kennedy half dollars were introduced in 1964 following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. The first Kennedy half dollars were struck in 90% silver, but the composition changed as the United States responded to rising silver prices and coin shortages. Kennedy half dollars dated 1965 through 1970 used a 40% silver composition, while the regular 1971 issue moved to the copper-nickel clad format. This makes the 1971 D an important transition point for collectors studying Kennedy half dollar history. Because of this transition, one of the most important things you can do is check the date before assuming that a Kennedy half dollar has silver value. A 1971 D is not a 40% silver Kennedy half dollar. If you are searching through a mixed collection, learn the composition differences between the earlier and later issues. This can prevent major mistakes when buying, selling, or evaluating a collection. Now imagine you find a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar in an old collection. If it is heavily worn, has normal circulation marks, and shows no obvious error, the realistic value is likely close to its face value. If it is in better circulated condition, perhaps around very fine or extremely fine, it may bring somewhat more but still generally not a dramatic amount. If it is uncirculated and attractive, the value can rise into the low dollar range and potentially much higher at exceptional grades. If it reaches a very high certified grade, the market can become dramatically different. Current published CPG data illustrates this progression from roughly $1 in lower mint state grades to much higher figures in the finest grades. This is why collectors should never judge a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar only by looking at the date. Two coins with exactly the same year and mint mark can have completely different values. One could be a worn pocket change coin worth around 50 cents. Another could be an attractive uncirculated example worth several dollars. A truly exceptional certified coin could be worth hundreds or even thousands. The coin's physical condition is one of the most important parts of the valuation process. The current PCGS population report is especially useful for understanding the high-grade market. As of the latest 2026 update available in the report, PCGS had recorded more than 4,000 certified 1971 D Kennedy half dollars across its listed mint state grades, but only a small fraction were at the highest levels. The report records examples as high as MS68, while the populations at those upper grades are dramatically smaller than the populations in the middle mint state grades. This scarcity at the top of the grading scale is one reason exceptional coins can attract substantially more attention. For a coin collector, the lesson is simple. Don't throw away a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar just because it looks ordinary, but don't assume it is a fortune either. Start with the basics. Confirm the year, confirm the D mint mark. Determine whether the coin is circulated or uncirculated. Examine the surfaces, look for unusual mint-made characteristics. Compare the coin with reliable grading standards. If the coin appears genuinely exceptional, then professional evaluation may be worthwhile. And if your coin is in good condition, the most honest answer is that it is generally a modest value collectible rather than a jackpot coin. Current catalog information puts a typical 1971 D in good condition around the neighborhood of its 50-cent face value, with values varying by source and market. That is important because responsible coin content should distinguish ordinary examples from rare high-grade pieces. At the same time, the 1971 D Kennedy half dollar remains a fascinating coin to search for because the biggest surprises often come from condition and unusual characteristics. A collector who finds an exceptionally clean, lustrous, high-grade example may have something much more interesting than an ordinary circulated half dollar. The published CPG figures show just how dramatically the market can change when a 1971 D reaches the highest certified grades. So, if you have a 1971 D Kennedy half dollar, take a close look before spending it. Do not clean it, polish it, scratch it, or attempt to improve its appearance with chemicals. Keep the coin in a safe holder, photograph both sides clearly, and compare its condition with reliable grading standards. If you notice a genuine-looking mint error or an unusual doubled feature, have the characteristic examined before assuming a value. The most important takeaway is that the 1971 D Kennedy half dollar is common in ordinary circulated grades, but can become much more interesting in exceptional condition. Its large mintage of 302,097,424 pieces means that the date and D mint mark alone do not make it rare. The real value comes from condition, originality, rarity of the particular grade, recognized varieties, and genuine mint errors. So what is your 1971 D Kennedy half dollar worth today? If it is in good circulated condition, think roughly around face value to perhaps under $1 in many ordinary market situations. If it is in higher circulated grades, the value may rise modestly. If it is mint state, values can move from around $1 into several dollars or more depending on the grade. At very high certified grades, published market figures can become dramatically higher, with an MS68 example currently listed around $3,100 in CPG data. But that top figure applies to an exceptionally rare high-grade certified example, not to an ordinary circulated coin. That distinction is what every collector should remember. 1971 D. Kennedy half dollar may be only a 50-cent coin, or it may be a surprisingly valuable condition rarity. The difference is not the date alone, it is what is actually in your hands. Check the D mint mark, study the condition, inspect the surfaces, look for legitimate errors or varieties, and never rely on an exaggerated internet claim without verifying the coin's grade and characteristics. If you enjoyed learning about the 1971 D. Kennedy half dollar, keep checking your old coins carefully. Sometimes the most interesting discoveries are not the oldest coins in a collection, but the coins that survived in unusually beautiful condition or contain a genuine mint-made variety. Your 1971 D. Kennedy half dollar may be common, but finding an exceptional example is what makes coin collecting exciting. And remember, the values discussed here are estimates based on current published market information. Actual auction or dealer prices can vary depending on grade, certification, appeal, demand, timing, and the exact characteristics of the individual coin. Coin number 2. If you have a 1972 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark, sitting in an old collection, a box of inherited coins, a drawer, or even somewhere among your loose change, you may be wondering whether this half dollar is worth only its face value or whether it could be worth considerably more in today's collector and auction market. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar without a mint mark is an important issue to understand because the absence of a mint mark is completely normal for this particular coin. It was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, where regular circulation coins did not carry a mint mark during this period. So if you look at your 1972 Kennedy half dollar and do not see a D or another mint mark, do not assume that the missing mint mark is an error. For the regular 1972 Philadelphia issue, no mint mark is exactly what you should expect. The 1972 Philadelphia Kennedy half dollar was produced in a large quantity, with a reported mintage of 153,180,000 pieces. The coin is made of copper-nickel clad over a pure copper center, meaning it is not one of the earlier 40% silver Kennedy half dollars. This is one of the most important facts to remember when determining its value. A 1972 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark should not automatically be valued for silver content simply because it is more than 50 years old. Its collectible value depends primarily on condition, varieties, errors, appeal, and demand. PCGS identifies the regular 1972 issue as a Philadelphia minted copper-nickel clad half dollar and lists its mintage at 153.18 million. Now let's talk about the condition you are most likely to encounter, circulated condition. A circulated 1972 Kennedy half dollar has been handled, spent, stored loosely with other coins, or otherwise exposed to normal wear. The high points of John F. Kennedy's portrait will show friction, and the original mint luster will usually be reduced or completely gone. On the reverse, the eagle, shield, stars, lettering, and other design details may show varying amounts of wear. If your coin looks worn but the date and design are still clearly visible, you are dealing with a normal circulated example rather than a mint state coin. For a typical circulated 1972 Kennedy half dollar without a mint mark, the realistic value is generally close to face value. In ordinary circulated grades, the coin is commonly worth around 50 cents to perhaps around $1, depending on exact condition, buyer demand, and the marketplace. The important point is that a circulated example should not automatically be advertised as a hundreds or thousands of dollars coin. The much higher prices you may see online generally involve exceptional mint state examples, rare varieties, or special circumstances rather than an ordinary worn coin. This is where many online coin value videos can become confusing. You might see a headline claiming that a 1972 Kennedy half dollar is worth thousands of dollars. That statement can be technically connected to a very high-grade certified example, but it does not mean every 1972 Kennedy half dollar is worth thousands. PCGS currently lists the regular 1972 issue with values that increase significantly as the grade rises. Its current price guide shows the coin around $1 at MS60, approximately $4 to $8 in MS63, roughly $10 to $13 in MS64, around $15 to $18 in MS65, approximately $25 to $36 in MS66, and much higher figures for the finest grades, with the MS68 range reaching into the thousands. That difference demonstrates one of the most important principles in coin collecting. Condition can completely change the value of a coin. A circulated 1972 Philadelphia Kennedy half dollar might be worth only around its 50-cent face value, while an exceptionally preserved coin certified at one of the highest grades can be worth dramatically more. This is why you should never compare your worn coin directly with a spectacular auction result for a certified MS66, MS67, or MS68 example. The auction record provides another interesting example. PCGS currently reports an auction record of $2,900 for a regular 1972 Kennedy half dollar graded MS66, with the listed sale occurring on April 2, 2023. That is an actual recorded auction result for a certified high-grade coin, but it should not be interpreted as the value of a normal circulated specimen. The difference between an ordinary circulated coin and an MS66 coin is enormous, so if you have a circulated 1972 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark, the first question should not be, is this a $2,900 coin? The first question should be, what grade is my coin actually in? If it has obvious wear on Kennedy's hair, cheek, jaw, and other high points, it is circulated. If the reverse shows significant friction on the eagle and other raised areas, that confirms circulation. If the coin has scratches, dents, stains, or cleaning, those problems can further reduce its desirability. The good news is that a 1972 Kennedy half dollar can still be worth examining carefully even if it is circulated. One reason is the existence of a recognized doubled die obverse variety for the 1972 Philadelphia issue. PCGS identifies a 1972 50-cent DDO, FS101 variety. This is not the same thing as a normal 1972 coin. A genuine double die example can be much more interesting to collectors, and high-grade examples have brought substantial premiums. PCGS records an auction result of $461 for an MS65 example of the 1972 DDO FS101 variety. However, this is where you need to be extremely careful. Not every apparent doubling is a genuine doubled die. Coins can show machine doubling, die deterioration, strike-related effects, scratches, or other forms of damage that may look like doubling under poor lighting. A genuine double die variety must be identified by the correct characteristics and attributed properly. If you believe your 1972 Kennedy half dollar has unusual doubling, do not immediately assume that it is a rare variety worth hundreds of dollars. Compare the features with trusted references, or have the coin examined by an experienced numismatist or professional grading service. The date itself is also important. Make sure you are actually looking at 1972. Sometimes old coins have weak or damaged dates, and a damaged number can lead to incorrect identification. Once the date is confirmed, look for the absence of a mint mark. On a normal 1972 Philadelphia Kennedy half dollar, there should be no D mint mark. This is not a missing mint mark error. Philadelphia's regular circulation production during this period simply did not use a mint mark. The composition is another major factor. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar is a copper-nickel clad coin. PCGS lists the composition as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center, with a diameter of 30.61 millimeters and a weight of 11.3 grams. If you have a coin from the 1960s, don't assume that every Kennedy half dollar is silver. The 1972 issue is part of the later clad era. One useful test is to look at the edge. On a normal clad Kennedy half dollar, the edge can reveal the copper core between the outer layers. A reddish-brown line around the edge is generally consistent with the copper center of a clad coin. This is one visual clue that separates the 1972 clad issue from earlier silver compositions. However, edge appearance alone should not be used to make a professional composition determination. You should also avoid cleaning the coin. This is one of the most important rules for anyone searching for valuable coins. If your 1972 Kennedy half dollar is dirty, scratched, dark, or discolored, do not polish it, scrub it, use chemicals, or try to make it shine. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may reduce collector interest. A coin with natural original surfaces is generally preferable to one that has been aggressively cleaned. When evaluating the obverse, carefully study Kennedy's portrait. Look at the hair above his ear, the cheek, jawline, neck, and other raised areas. On a circulated coin, these areas will gradually become smoother. On an uncirculated coin, the original texture and luster should remain. However, remember that an uncirculated coin can still have contact marks from being struck, transported, and stored. Mint state does not mean perfect. It means the coin does not show the wear associated with circulation. On the reverse, examine the eagle and shield. Look at the feather detail, the shield, the stars, the lettering, and the open fields. A high-grade example should retain strong detail and original-looking surfaces. If you find a coin that looks unusually fresh compared with other 1972 Kennedy half dollars, it may be worth setting aside for closer examination. One of the biggest surprises in the Kennedy half dollar series is how much certified grade can affect the price. PCGS's current guide shows the regular 1972 issue moving from very modest values in lower mint state grades to much higher values in the finest grades. The listed figures include about $25 to $36 around MS66, $55 to $90 around MS67, and approximately $1,400 to $3,850 around MS68. These are guide values rather than guaranteed auction prices, and actual results can vary. The auction market confirms that exceptional examples can attract serious money. PCGS's Kennedy half-dollar auction database currently lists 239 auction lots for the 1972 regular issue, and an auction record of $2,899.99. Again, this figure belongs to an exceptional certified example, and should never be used as the expected value for a normal circulated coin. This distinction is especially important if you're making a YouTube video about the coin. It is more accurate to explain that the 1972 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar can range from approximately face value in ordinary circulated condition to substantially higher amounts in exceptional certified grades. That is much more useful for viewers than simply claiming that every 1972 Kennedy half-dollar is worth thousands of dollars. If your coin is in good or heavily circulated condition, a realistic expectation is generally around 50 cents, with some examples potentially bringing a modest premium depending on the exact market. If the coin is in better circulated condition, it may bring somewhat more. If it is genuinely uncirculated, the value can move into the dollar range and beyond. If it is a high-end certified coin, especially one in a rare top grade, the value can become dramatically higher. The phrase "today's auction market" also needs to be understood correctly. Auction prices are not fixed prices. A coin can sell for one amount at one auction and another amount at a different auction. Factors such as grading service, grade I appeal, strike quality, surface preservation, certification, auction venue, collector demand, and timing can all influence the final price. That is why a single auction record should not be presented as a guaranteed value for every coin of the same date. If you are holding a circulated 1972 Kennedy half-dollar right now, take a moment to examine it carefully. Confirm that it is a 1972 date. Confirm that there is no mint mark. Check whether the coin has normal circulation wear. Look for scratches and damage. Then inspect the lettering and design for anything that might represent a legitimate variety. If the coin appears unusually sharp and well preserved, compare it with professional grading standards. The absence of a mint mark is actually part of what makes the coin easy to identify. You don't need to search for a hidden D or assume that something went wrong at the mint. The normal Philadelphia 1972 issue was produced without a mint mark. The reported mintage of 153,180,000 means that the ordinary issue is not rare simply because it has no mint mark. Another important point is that a coin's value does not come from a dramatic story alone. A coin must have something that collectors actually want. In the case of the regular 1972 Kennedy half-dollar, the strongest value drivers are exceptional grade and recognized varieties. A normal circulated example is common. A pristine top-grade example is much harder to find, and a genuine double-die variety can command a substantial premium when properly attributed. If you discover possible doubling on your coin, examine the date and lettering under magnification, but don't rely on a single photograph. Compare the suspected doubling with documented examples of the recognized 1972 DDO FS1 variety. PCGS specifically identifies this variety and has recorded an MS65 auction result of $461, showing that a genuine attributed variety can be significantly more valuable than a normal coin. Still, even a genuine variety does not automatically mean a coin is worth hundreds of dollars in every condition. Grade matters here too. A circulated variety may bring considerably less than a high-grade certified example. The market rewards rarity combined with condition and demand. So if you have a 1972 Kennedy half-dollar with no mint mark in circulated condition, the honest answer is that it is usually not a major jackpot coin. Its ordinary value is generally close to the 50-cent face value, perhaps with a modest premium depending on condition and market. But if you discover exceptional preservation, a legitimate recognized variety, or another authentic mint-made error, the story can change dramatically. This is what makes coin collecting so exciting. You don't need every coin you find to be worth thousands of dollars. Sometimes the real excitement comes from learning why one coin is common, while another example of the exact same date can be rare because of its grade or variety. The 1972 Philadelphia Kennedy half-dollar is a perfect example of this principle. Before you sell your coin, take clear photographs of both sides and the edge. Keep the coin in its original condition. If you believe it could be a high-grade rarity, consider professional authentication and grading. Professional certification can be particularly useful when a coin's potential value is high enough to justify the expense. And remember, the $2,900 auction record reported by PCGS is for an exceptional MS66 example, not an ordinary circulated 1972 Kennedy half-dollar. The PCGS price guide also shows that values vary dramatically by grade, reaching much higher levels for the rarest top-grade examples. So the next time you see a 1972 Kennedy half dollar with no mint mark, don't throw it aside and don't assume it is automatically rare. Instead, look closely. Check the condition. Examine the surfaces, study the date and lettering. Look for legitimate doubling or other mint-made characteristics. Most importantly, understand that the normal no mint mark Philadelphia issue is common in circulated condition, while exceptional high-grade examples and recognized varieties are where the serious collector value can appear. If your 1972 Kennedy half dollar is circulated and worn, a reasonable expectation is around 50 cents to perhaps about $1 depending on condition and market. If it is a better quality uncirculated example, the value can rise. If it is an exceptionally high-grade certified coin, the value can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And if it is a genuine 1972 DDO variety, it may have an additional premium, with PCGS documenting a $461 auction result for an MS65 example. The most important message is simple: don't judge a 1972 Kennedy half dollar only by its date, judge the entire coin. The mint location, condition, surface quality, variety, authenticity, and certified grade all matter. A worn coin may be worth only its face value, while an exceptional example can be a much more valuable collectible. So check your old Kennedy half dollars carefully. That 1972 coin with no mint mark may be an ordinary circulated half dollar, or it could be something much more interesting if it has exceptional preservation or a legitimate recognized variety. Always verify before selling, never clean the coin, and remember that published price guides and auction records are reference points, not guarantees of what your individual coin will sell for today. Coin number 3. If you have a 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar in your collection, you may be surprised to learn that even a modern coin can attract collector attention when it has strong condition, exceptional preservation, or a recognized variety. The 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and the P mint mark appears on the obverse near the bottom of the portrait. Unlike many older Kennedy half dollars, this is a modern copper-nickel-clad coin, so its value is not based on silver content. For a circulated coin in very fine condition, the realistic value is generally around its 50-cent face value, with the possibility of a modest premium depending on eye appeal and collector demand. The much higher prices sometimes seen online are normally associated with certified mint state coins, special designations, or varieties rather than an ordinary circulated example. The 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar is part of a modern period in which the Kennedy half dollar continues to be produced primarily for collectors and limited circulation demand. The United States Mint first offered the 2023 Philadelphia and Denver Kennedy half dollars directly to collectors on May 15, 2023. The Mint sold them in 2-roll sets containing 20 Philadelphia coins and 20 Denver coins, and also offered large bags containing both Philadelphia and Denver examples. PCGS records the original 2-roll set issue price at $34.50 and notes that the 2023 P coins were produced as regular circulation strikes. The first thing to understand about your 2023 P Kennedy half dollar is the meaning of the P mint mark. The P tells you that the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. If your coin clearly shows a P near Kennedy's portrait, you have the Philadelphia issue. This is not a rare mint mark by itself. The P is an identifying feature, not an automatic indication that the coin is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Now let's focus on the condition mentioned in this video. Very fine, often abbreviated VF. A very fine coin has clearly experienced circulation, but it still retains a substantial amount of its original design detail. On the obverse, Kennedy's hair, cheek, jaw, neck, and other raised areas will show noticeable wear. Some of the finer details will be softened, but the portrait remains strong and recognizable. On the reverse, the eagle, shield, stars, feathers, and lettering will also show circulation wear. The coin should still have good overall detail, but it will not have the untouched mint appearance of an uncirculated coin. For a 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar in genuine very fine circulated condition, the most realistic value is usually close to face value. In ordinary circumstances, you should think of approximately 50 cents to around $1 rather than a huge jackpot. The exact amount can vary depending on the coin's appearance, whether it has damage, how it is sold, and what buyers are willing to pay at that particular moment. Because this is a modern issue, a normal circulated example is not considered a major rarity. This is an important point because modern coins are often misunderstood. A coin does not automatically become valuable simply because it has a recent date. A 2023 coin is obviously much newer than a 1923 coin, but age alone does not determine numismatic value. In the case of the 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar, the major opportunities for higher value come from exceptional grade, unusual varieties, genuine mint errors, and special collector designations. The difference between very fine and mint state is especially important. A very fine coin has been circulated and therefore has visible wear. A mint state coin has no circulation wear and can retain its original mint surfaces and luster. Even though a mint state coin may look almost new, it can still have small contact marks from production and handling. Modern Kennedy half dollars were often transported in rolls, bags, and other containers where coins could strike one another, leaving small marks on otherwise attractive surfaces. This is one reason high-grade modern Kennedy half dollars can be surprisingly interesting. PCGS currently records the 2023 P regular strike Kennedy half dollar with an auction record of $152.50 for a PCGS MS67 example sold in January 2024. PCGS also lists a $35 price guide value for that particular MS67 grade. The difference between a circulated very fine coin and an MS67 certified coin is therefore enormous. That $152.50 auction result should not be used as the value of every 2023 P Kennedy half dollar. It represents a specific certified high-grade example. An ordinary circulated coin does not suddenly become a $152 coin just because it has the same year and mint mark. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone researching coin values. The current PCGS auction data shows just how limited the documented market is for the regular 2023 P issue. PCGS's Kennedy half dollar auction database currently records 16 auction lots for the 2023 PMS category, with an auction record of $152.50. By comparison, many older Kennedy half dollar dates have hundreds or thousands of documented auction lots. This makes the 2023 P market a developing modern market where condition and certification can have a particularly important effect on prices. Now take a close look at the coin itself. On the obverse, you will see the famous portrait of President John F. Kennedy facing left. The word Liberty appears around the upper portion of the design, while the date 2023 is located near the lower part of the portrait. The P mint mark is positioned near the lower area of the obverse. The reverse displays the presidential seal, including the eagle, shield, stars, arrows, olive branch, and surrounding lettering. Because this is a modern copper-nickel-clad half dollar, the edge is reeded. PCGS lists the diameter at approximately 30.61 millimeters and identifies the metal composition as 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel. If your coin is circulated and graded very fine, you should inspect the edge for unusual characteristics, but do not mistake ordinary circulation damage for a mint error. A dented edge, scratch, gouge, or flattened area caused after the coin left the mint is not automatically valuable. Genuine mint errors are created during the manufacturing process and must be identified based on their characteristics. Another reason to examine a 2023 P Kennedy half dollar carefully is the existence of modern doubled die varieties. PCGS and other major references recognize a 2023 P Kennedy half dollar doubled die obverse variety designated VP001. This is an important distinction because a genuine recognized variety can be worth more than an ordinary coin. Great Collections reports a 2023 P Kennedy half dollar doubled die obverse VP001 selling for $231 in grade 65. There are also documented auction results for the VP001 variety in other grades. PCGS records an NGC MS66 example selling for $72 in February 2024, and an NGC MS67 example selling for $48 at the same auction event. These results demonstrate something very important. Even when a coin has a recognized double die variety, the market price is not fixed. Grade, certification, timing, demand, and the individual auction can all affect the final selling price. This also means you should not look at a doubled area on your coin and immediately assume you have a valuable variety. Machine doubling and other strike-related effects can resemble true doubled dies. A photograph taken at the wrong angle can make ordinary design characteristics appear dramatically doubled. If your 2023 P Kennedy half dollar appears to have doubling on the date, lettering, or other design elements, compare it with authenticated examples of the VP001 variety before assigning a high value. The condition of your circulated coin remains extremely important. If your 2023 P Kennedy half dollar has significant wear across Kennedy's portrait, it is unlikely to receive a high mint state grade. If the coin has been in circulation for a long period, the high points of the portrait will show friction. The original luster will be reduced, and small scratches or contact marks may be present. Very fine condition is still a collectible grade, but it is not normally where the dramatic auction prices occur for this particular modern issue. The large price differences occur when a coin is preserved at an exceptional level and receives a high certified grade. For example, PCGS's documented $152.50 auction result was for an MS67 coin, not a very fine circulated example. This is why it is important to separate three different questions when discussing value. The first question is what an ordinary circulated 2023 P Kennedy half dollar is worth. The second is what a high-grade certified example can bring. The third is whether the coin contains a recognized variety or genuine mint error. These three situations can produce completely different prices. If you have a very fine 2023 P Kennedy half dollar with no unusual variety or error, the safest realistic estimate is around face value, generally about 50 cents and potentially somewhat more depending on the marketplace. If it has exceptionally attractive surfaces despite circulation, a collector might be willing to pay a small premium, but you should not expect the same prices achieved by certified MS66 or MS67 examples. One thing that makes the 2023 P Kennedy half dollar interesting is that these coins are still relatively new. Many examples have not spent decades in circulation. Some were purchased directly from the mint, removed from rolls, or saved by collectors. Others entered circulation and developed wear quickly. Because of this, there is still plenty of opportunity to find attractive examples in collections and coin accumulations. If you find one that appears almost untouched, do not clean it. Modern coins can be damaged just as easily as older coins. Scrubbing, polishing, chemical cleaning, or rubbing can create hairlines and unnatural surfaces that may reduce the coin's collector appeal. If the coin is potentially valuable, preserve its original condition instead of trying to make it look brighter. Use good lighting when examining your coin. Look at Kennedy's hair, forehead, cheek, jaw, neck, and the open fields around the portrait. Then turn the coin over and inspect the eagle, shield, stars, arrows, olive branch, and the fields surrounding the design. Look for unusual raised areas, missing details, doubling, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clip planchets, or other characteristics that appear to have happened during mint production. But remember that a coin that has been dropped, hit, scratched, bent, or damaged after leaving the mint may have an interesting appearance without having any additional numismatic value. Professional collectors distinguish between mint errors and post-mint damage. This distinction can make the difference between a normal 50-cent coin and a collectible error. The 2023 P Kennedy half dollar also has several special collector designations associated with certified examples. PCGS lists related categories such as first strike, advanced release, and first day of issue. These designations are separate from the ordinary circulated coin you might find outside a collector package. For example, PCGS records an auction result of $105.55 for a 2023 P First Strike Kennedy half dollar graded MS67. That is another example of how special certification and high condition can create premiums in the modern coin market. But again, this is not the value of a normal very fine circulated example. If your coin is genuinely very fine, the most important thing is not to become discouraged because it is not worth hundreds of dollars. Coin collecting is about finding unusual characteristics and understanding why certain pieces are more desirable. Your 2023 P Kennedy half dollar can still be a useful part of a collection, especially if it helps complete a year-end mint mark set of Kennedy half dollars. A complete collection can include Philadelphia and Denver issues for modern years, and collectors often pay attention to differences in condition and certification. The 2023 P issue is particularly easy to identify because of its P mint mark, while the Denver version carries a D. The 2023 P Kennedy half dollar is also a good example of why a coin's face value and collector value are not always the same. Face value is fixed at 50 cents. Collector value is determined by the market. If a coin is common and circulated, collector value may remain very close to face value. If the same coin is exceptionally preserved, professionally graded, or contains a rare variety, collector value can rise dramatically. So if someone tells you that every 2023 P Kennedy half dollar is worth $100, $200, or even more, be very cautious. The documented auction evidence does not support that claim for ordinary circulated coins. PCGS's recorded $152.50 result was achieved by an MS67 certified example, and other special designation examples have also brought higher prices than ordinary circulation pieces. At the same time, don't make the opposite mistake and assume that every 2023 P Kennedy half dollar is worth exactly 50 cents. If you find a coin with a genuine recognized double die variety, a significant mint error, or exceptionally high-grade preservation, the value can be considerably higher. The documented VP001 double die examples show that recognized varieties can attract additional collector interest. For a very fine circulated example, however, the honest valuation remains modest. Around 50 cents to approximately $1 is a reasonable general expectation for an ordinary coin, with the actual selling price depending on the marketplace and the coin's precise condition. If there is a legitimate variety or error, that estimate can change if you plan to sell the coin. Do not rely solely on an online headline. Look for actual completed sales of coins matching your date, mint mark, condition, variety, and certification. An asking price is not the same as a completed sale. A seller may list a common 2023 P Kennedy half dollar for hundreds of dollars, but that does not prove buyers are actually paying that amount. Auction records are much more useful because they show what a buyer actually paid in a completed transaction. The PCGS auction record of $152.50 for a 2023 PMS67 is therefore more meaningful than an unsupported online listing claiming a much higher price. If your coin looks unusually clean, it may be worth comparing it with certified MS67 examples. But remember that professional grading is difficult to predict from photographs alone. A coin that looks perfect to the naked eye can receive a lower grade because of tiny contact marks, hairlines, weak strike characteristics, or other surface issues. And if your coin has already circulated enough to qualify as very fine, it is unlikely to receive a top mint state grade because circulation wear cannot be removed without damaging the coin. This is another reason never to polish a circulated coin in an attempt to increase its value. The 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar is a modern coin, but it still carries the historic Kennedy design that has been part of American coinage since 1964. John F. Kennedy's portrait and the presidential seal continue to make the half dollar one of the most recognizable U.S. denominations. Even a coin worth only face value can be an interesting piece of modern American numismatic history. So what is your 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar worth today? If it is a normal circulated coin in very fine condition, a realistic value is generally around 50 cents to about $1. If it has stronger condition, its value can increase. If it reaches a high certified mint state grade, the market can be dramatically different. PCGS currently records a $152.50 auction record for a regular 2023 PMS67 example. If the coin has the recognized VP001 Doubled Die Obverse variety, values can also rise above those of ordinary examples. Documented sales include $231 for a Great Collections MS65 example and $72.48 for NGC certified MS66 and MS67 examples recorded through PCGS's auction database. These numbers demonstrate that variety attribution matters, but they also show that auction prices can vary significantly. The most important message is that the P mint mark does not automatically make the 2023 Kennedy half dollar rare. The coin becomes more interesting when you combine the P mint mark with exceptional preservation, a recognized variety, or a genuine mint error. A normal circulated very fine example is usually a modest value coin, while exceptional certified examples can bring substantially more. So before spending your 2023 P Kennedy half dollar, look at it carefully. Confirm the P mint mark, check the date, examine the amount of wear, inspect the surfaces and lettering, look for legitimate double die characteristics or other mint-made errors. Do not clean the coin. And if you believe you have something exceptional, consider professional authentication and grading. The modern coin market can be unpredictable, and prices can change as collectors discover more examples and as auction demand changes. Published price guides and previous auction results are useful reference points, but they are not guarantees of what your individual coin will sell for. The exact grade, certification, variety, eye appeal, and buyer demand all matter. Ultimately, a 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar in very fine circulated condition is usually a 50-cent coin with potentially a small premium, not a guaranteed fortune. But that does not mean you should ignore it. The possibility of a recognized double die, a genuine mint error, or an exceptionally preserved example is exactly why collectors continue examining modern Kennedy half dollars, so check your coins carefully. That ordinary-looking 2023 P. Kennedy half dollar could be worth face value, a modest premium, or considerably more if it has a characteristic that collectors truly want. The key is not simply the year or the P mint mark. The key is what makes your particular coin different from the millions of ordinary examples. And when you find something unusual, verify it before assigning a value, because in coin collecting, accurate identification is the first step toward accurate valuation.